Hi, I'm Phil Rude. I'm an illustrator, comic book artist, and sometimes writer. Today I'm inking this one-page comic in my Reluctant Best Friends series. I'm using various pens. I have brush pens with felt tips. I have brush pens with bristles. I have markers, fine liners, you name it. The paper is Canson Smooth Bristol, and the coffee is chock full of nuts, original roast. Before we get going into talking about everything this comic is about, I just wanted to mention that I've got some physical books in my store, as well as some original art, and I'm putting more stuff up all the time. I've got pieces that were used as episode art for my podcast, The Picture Show with Austin and Phil Rude. I have some comic page original art. A lot of it is from Tales of the Warrior Igor, but I'll have some other stuff up there soon. Prices vary a little bit as of right now. I am only shipping in the United States. Apologies to those of you who are living in freer, less scary parts of the world. I hope to expand to more worldwide shipping soon. I just need to kind of grow into it and do a little more research on shipping rates. Also wanted to mention I will be tabling at a couple market events locally here in Southwest Florida this month. February 14th, that is Valentine's Day, I will have a table set up at Nice Guys Pizza in Cape Coral, Florida. That's Valentine's Day, so bring your sweetie out, say hi, or come by on your own. It's cool. Either way, I'll be there, and I would love to see you. And then the following day, that'll be February 15th, I will be at Lost World Books in downtown Fort Myers, Florida. Again, come by and say hi. And I should also mention that Lost World currently has a bunch of my books for sale in their store. Go by, check out their awesome store. They were good enough to give me a little display up front by the coffee bar, and they're awesome there. So go check them out if you are in Southwest Florida. But yeah, at both these events, I will have books, I'll have comics, original art, I'll have sketches. I'll have fist bumps available at all these events, and I will be one of many vendors. There will be so many cool people selling a lot of amazing merch. It'll be a great hangout to boot. So if you're local, come on out. I want to thank you for joining me in this brave new world of 2025. Now that we're on the other side of the holidays, we can all take a breath and try to shuffle our lives back to some semblance of normality. Oh, wait, that's not happening anymore, is it? Darkness on the dumbest timeline aside, there are still some things that I think are worth celebrating, even if we may do it in a way that seems a little dark or cynical. Chief among these celebratory things are personal victories and milestones. We all have them. And when times are tough, it may be more important than ever to celebrate them, even though they don't seem to make a lot of big picture difference, quote unquote. Today, as I drop this video, today I celebrate 20 years of sobriety. And what better way to do that, I thought, than to make a one-page comic celebrating the clarity to see the error of my ways in a kind of dark way that I thought of. A little background to explain this comic. This comic is one of a semi-autobiographical series I do on a semi-occasional basis that I call Reluctant Best Friends. These comics are about me living with my inner voice, or critic, or alter ego, or shadow self, which is manifested as a hard-drinking, chain-smoking monkey named Darwin. In these comics, Darwin has often been my inner critic, calling me out for being bad at music and art, and kind of a loser in general. He's that voice that a lot of us have and try to ignore, often to varying degrees of success. He's the voice I will probably hear the second I post this video. He'll whisper about how it's not good enough and how everyone will hate me now. But what Darwin doesn't know is that I already know that, and I don't really care that much. Largely because I took my meds today, so, yay me. Darwin has also been something else to me, and that is my shadow self. Like I said earlier, Darwin represents often the worst version of myself. Darwin, as I portray him in a character, is angry. He's bitter. He's drowning in booze. He's lashing out at everyone he can. Darwin is the version of me that 20 years ago I decided I didn't want to be anymore. So I made this comic that I intended mostly to be about reckoning with the memory that still lingers of that guy that I used to be. How I wish I could leave it all behind, but I can't. It's part of my past. It's part of me. It led me to who I am today, which is mostly a good thing. The memories of who I used to be, hazy as they may be, they do serve a purpose. They serve a purpose in that they remind me not to go back there. They help me progress as a human being. So I thought it would be appropriate to use an old poem called Antigonish by Hugh Mearns. Hugh Mearns, to describe the love-hate relationship that I have with the memory of old Phil. Or would that be young Phil? The old version of me, which is the actually young me. Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. Old Phil is me now, which is the newest version, or at least middle-aged Phil is me now. Young Phil is the old Phil because young is the new old. Middle-aged is the new young, but only in comparison to the old, which is also the new old. This is much funnier if you're reading it, preferably silently to yourself. I realize this is much funnier as I was writing it down. So maybe it's just much funnier if you're me. In any, the current version of me, now me. New, old, middle-aged Phil. The point is, I thought of this poem as a perfect vehicle to describe the relationship between Darwin and myself, and the old Phil and new Phil. And I also love it because it's a perfect, mysterious verse. And I am only using the first verse. Partly because that's now the way I've seen it most. It's the predominantly seen use of this poem. And partly because I think this single verse sort of encapsulates the entire poem's idea just fine. I first encountered this poem, or at least this verse of it, in a short comic by the amazing Roger Langridge called The Fez, which is this odd little kind of artifact of indie comics. It's just this kind of like perfect little insane book full of fun vignettes. If you can find it or find a download of it, I bought a PDF of it from his website years ago. Do it. Check it out. It's great. It's so much fun. Then years later, the poem was central. Years as I saw it. I think the movie predates when I read the comic, but the poem was central in a movie called Identity, which thematically I thought it fit pretty well with. It sort of fit into the narrative of that and the twist of the movie really well. Similarly, I thought it fit pretty well with what I was trying to say here. Despite 2 decades of sobriety, and maybe because of it, the shadow of my former self still looms sometimes. I do not like the person I used to be. And yet I can't totally leave that person behind because They are a part of the journey to where I am today. The contrast between who I was and who I am it's a solid marker of progress. I wish I could forget who I was, but I also need to appreciate that I'm not that person anymore. There's a bit of a who I'm not is part of what defines who I am kind of thing in there. On the creative side of this whole thing, this is exactly what I love about making Reluctant Best Friends comics. I don't do them often, and I don't think they're necessarily the best comics that I make, but they are personal, and sometimes they feature me blowing off my shadow self, just sort of taking the piss out of Darwin and his cynicism, and it's kind of cathartic in that way. I recommend making some autobio comics or essays or whatever however you want to tell these little vignettes or stories, even if they're highly dramatized the way Reluctant Best Friends is. I don't really have a monkey living in my house smoking cigarettes constantly and telling me how much I suck. It's just there to represent a question or a thing that I'm thinking about in my life. So I do recommend that you make some version of what's going on in your life as a creative project. Even if you only do them for yourself, like a Creative Island project. If you don't know about Creative Island projects, check out my talk with Heather from Sunshine and Power Cuts and find out all about them. I'll link it in the description of this video. But I find making these comics to be kind of like journaling in the way that they are helpful to me in sorting some of these ideas and questions and thoughts out, and also as a cool creative exercise. That's going to do it for me this week. I wanted to end with just an admittedly broad and general statement to say if you have ever wondered if you might have an issue with drugs or alcohol, I think it's generally a pretty good idea to take a look at your relationship to drugs and alcohol and ask yourself honestly if it is a healthy one. I think if you think there's any question of it being a bad one, that it's worth knowing about that and figuring out what you want to do about it. I also like to throw out there that I am willing to talk to anyone who is curious about my experience with alcohol and my experience as a sober person. If you have any questions about that, I am not a substance abuse counselor. I am not a counselor or therapist of any kind. I am not qualified to do that work. I am happy to answer questions about my experience and what it has been for me. You can find you can get a hold of me through my website. That is philrudeart.com. Hit the contact tab at the top and send me an email or send me a DM through social media. I'm at philrude75 on Instagram, and I am at philrude.bluesky.social on Blue Sky, and that's pretty much the extent of my social media at the moment. If you want, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about any of that stuff. That said, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time. Antigonish. by Hugh Mearns. Yesterday, upon the stair, I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away.